not all, that term groomer, a lot of people don't like that term online. They're very upset, but they're real. Right. There are groomers.
What I find so preposterous about this moment is that on the one hand, the Democrats are actually advocating to teach about sexuality and crazy gender theory to 7-year-old children. And on the other hand, they get offended if we throw around terms like groomer to push back against it.
Next week on Sesame Street, M will be for myocarditis. This is, look, I've always said that Elmo's a groomer anyway.
Elmo's a kid. What's wrong with you? Oh God. So if you guys needed that montage to know that groomer has become the hot button buzzword on the right, there you go. And the question is, where the hell did this term come from? And a new Washington Post article has revealed that where the smear originated and why it was sort of latched onto so quickly by everyone from Fox News to Joe Rogan, just like talking about groomer. So it all begins in Nebraska. On March 10th, 2021, Nebraska's education department released proposed health education standards, including grade by grade guidelines for sex education. That's great. Kids should have sex education, learn about their bodies, learn about boundaries, learn about one of the major functions that the human body performs. Seems good to me. Let's look at what they were gonna learn about. Kindergartners would learn medically accurate terms for body parts. Seems reasonable, including genitalia. They're gonna learn about interracial and same-sex families. They would also learn about consent and how to clearly say no. First graders would learn the definitions of gender identity and gender role stereotypes. The meaning of sexual orientation would be explained in the 3rd grade. Wow. I wish I had that sex education when I was in elementary school, but no, those proposed guidelines in Nebraska completely freaked out the community. So this happened. One of the people who was against this wrote. A retired pediatrician, named Sue Greenwald wrote, "This is not sex ed as anyone knows it." This was in an email. Lessons that met these standards, she wrote, would be grooming children to be sexual victims. Hear that? Grooming them to be sexual victims when you talk about interracial sex, same sex, and consent. Cool. 8 days after Nebraska officials released those standards, parents and grandparents formed a private Facebook group, which became a key organizing tool of the Protect Nebraska Children Coalition, or PNCC. And it helped build a groundswell against the standards by starting a petition drive, lobbying officials, and launching a Facebook campaign targeting the Nebraska Department of Education and some state school members. They obviously had an ally, which was Governor Pete Ricketts. Ricketts called for the standards to be scrapped just one day after their release, and then toured the state to galvanize opposition. At a July 1st Protect Our Kids in Schools town hall meeting, Ricketts referenced Greenwald, quote, "These standards are sexualizing children. I talked to one pediatrician who said, this is grooming 101. So you have retired pediatrician sending an email, a Facebook group, the governor, and suddenly we're all saying grooming. Then it goes on, they start organizing. So in November, PNCC launched the Protect Nebraska Children Political Action Committee. Oh, you always need a PAC to endorse candidates for local and state school boards. And they did other things like movie nights or they created films, because that's what you do. Like when you're on the right, you're like, oh, it's not real until we have our own film. Look at Bannon. The film was called Mind Polluters, and it was produced by Mark and Amber Archer, a Christian couple from Indiana whose statement of faith on their website of their Fearless Features filmmaking ministry describes homosexuality, lesbianism, and bisexuality as sexual immorality, grouped with bestiality and incest, because they're totally the same thing. The movie claims students are being groomed for sex with pedophiles and says parents are obligated as Christians to remove their children from public schools. It snowballs from there, you guys. This is, again, the imagined I mean, I don't know how parents have this much time on their hands. I thought as a parent, you're pretty damn busy raising your kids and working and just, life in general, not getting support like you should. Turns out, no, you got plenty of time to be upset, at least in Nebraska and in this community, upset at sexual education. Ray, thoughts on this?
Yeah, first I want to say so much of this is pushed and funded by the private and charter school lobbies, because this is not just an attack on the LGBTQ community. This is an attack on the institution of public education, because it's not profitable for these organizations in the same way that they can make insane sums of money by charter schools and by private schools. That said, as a member of the LGBTQ community, I'm always horrified and disgusted to see these types of stories, because there's literally no evidence in any way, shape, or form that concludes that gay people are more likely to engage in any sorts of these disgusting acts against children. Not at all. But what there is evidence to support is that teaching children consent prevents sexual assault, and it also gives children the tool to communicate to a trusted adult that their consent has been violated. It teaches them that if they are the victims of sexual assault, that that's wrong, and that they have options to report that. Without that type of comprehensive sex education, it makes children more vulnerable. So when people like this Sue Greenwald say that it actually creates more victims and they frame consent education as a bad thing, it just makes me wonder, what are you doing, Sue?
Yeah.
That you want children to be more susceptible to be victimized. Like, what are you getting out of children not being taught to say no, right? Like these pushing that narrative, it just makes me think, what kind of heinous things are you doing to children? Because
this is a pediatrician. Right? So this is a pediatrician saying, no, I don't want children to know consent, learn consent. And it's not surprising you have, this is, a party that using the term groomer that is now stripping bodily autonomy from half of the American population. Of course they don't want children to have bodily autonomy. These are people who are supposedly obsessed with pedophiles. And they're not actually teaching children how to thwart a real pedophile, which is knowing about your own body, knowing about consent, understanding what is right and wrong, and being able to speak up. So just to Ray's point, guys, she's not pulling this from nowhere. Columbia University's Sexual Health Initiative to Foster Transformation, or SHIFT, suggests that sexuality education during high school may have lasting and protective effects for adolescents. The research found students who received formal education about how to say no to sex before the age of 18 were less likely to experience penetrative sexual assault in college. Students who receive refusal training also received other forms of sexual education, including instructions about birth control, prevention of sexually transmitted diseases. Students who received abstinence-only instruction did not show significantly reduced experiences of campus sexual assault. And we're talking high school, older, but starting younger, there is nothing wrong with that. Like, to Ray's point also, like, do we mistrust teachers this much? You think anyone just walks into a school like, I'm the teacher now? No, man. There's credential programs. You actually have to work hard to become a teacher. Yeah, you gotta pass a background check. Multiple. Yeah, you gotta pass drug tests pretty much every year. Like, in what world? But of course, it is all setting it up, buttering it up to ruin and defund public education and funnel it all to Betsy DeVos's family.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, we really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.